Hi boys and girls, today we're going to be making a landscape with Moai sculptures. Hopefully you have already watched the video on the history of Rapa Nui or Easter Island and the Moai sculptures, and today we're going to draw our own version of Rapa Nui or Easter Island. On this artwork we're going to include 3 different kinds of space: a foreground, a middle ground, and a background, and practice some techniques that artists use to show space. So at the bottom of my page, I'm going to start by drawing a landform, and I don't want this line to be too crazy, but I also don't want it to be perfectly straight. I want it to look like a natural landscape. So I'm going to draw 3 lines like this, one in the front, one in the middle, and I don't want to go too high on my page. I want to save the top third of my page for the background, and then one back here. So I've got my foreground, my middle ground, and my background. In the background, I'm going to add the ocean. So a little bit higher than this third line, I am going to draw a perfectly straight line. This is my horizon line. The horizon line is the line that separates the land or the sea from the sky. So above this line is the sky, and I'm going to draw a sun on the horizon. So I'm going to start with just a half circle. And from there, I'm going to draw a series of lines, first vertical, then several diagonal lines, and my last line will probably be almost horizontal. I'm going to repeat the same steps on the other side. Now, in this space on the bottom, I'm going to draw 3 different moai. The one in the foreground is going to be the largest because it's closest to me. In the middle ground, it will be slightly smaller, and in the background, it will be the smallest. So to draw the moai, I'm going to start with a large rectangle. This one in the front, I want to start higher than my first line, but I want to, and I'm going to round my corners on my rectangle so it's not too perfect. I want to go below that line, so I'm going to cross over it. Now, because my moai sculpture is actually on this piece of land, I need to erase out the part of the land that goes behind the sculpture. Next, I'm going to draw the shoulders. So I'm going to start near the bottom of the rectangle and just draw a line that kind of curves out and down. Repeat on the other side. And then to make it look like my moai sculpture has kind of sunken into the ground, I'm going to draw a line starting over here that kind of goes past the shoulders, and that will make it look like it's sinking into the ground and that the ground is overlapping the sculpture at this point. We will add more details on this later. I'm going to repeat these steps here in this middle section of earth. So I'm going to draw a slightly smaller rectangle this time because I want this one to look farther away than this one. Erase out my line, add my shoulders, and my line across the bottom. My last one will be in the third section of earth, and it will be the smallest sculpture. So I'll make my rectangle the smallest here, erase out, add my shoulders, and my earth. First, I want to draw the ears on my Rapa Nui. So I'm going to add these to the sides of the head, really long, skinny ears. I almost forgot these. And I'm going to erase out any land that those might cross over. Here we go. Now I'm going to trace my Sharpie lines. And if you don't have a Sharpie to trace your pencil lines, you could use a black crayon or a black waterproof pen. On this project, we're going to be adding some marker and blending it with water, so we wouldn't want anything that is water soluble. Just tracing over my pencil lines. Right now I'm not adding anything new yet. We are going to add details on our moai faces. Going to keep my horizon line super straight there. All right. Now, I'm going to use a couple different things to color. First, I'm going to be using some crayons. And so I'm going to go ahead and add the facial features with my Sharpie before I color these with crayons so that they don't disappear. To make the eyes of the moai, I'm going to draw a straight line near the top of the head, just right about where the ears start. And this shape that we're going to draw for the eyes is going to look almost like sunglasses, because on the actual sculptures, it's really just kind of a shadow here being cast by the rock. So I'm going to draw a line that curves under, over in the middle, and then under again. Looks a lot like sunglasses. And I'm actually going to fill these in, because like I said, on the actual sculpture, this portion of the head where the eyes are is really just in shadow. I'm going to repeat that step on my other moai. Now they do have faces carved in, so I'm going to add the nose next. I'll start with my biggest one. To add the nose, I'm going to draw from this empty space here 2 straight lines that come about 2/3 of the way down the head, almost to the bottom. And at the bottom, I'm going to draw a nostril on the left, a nostril on the right, and then in between, I'm going to draw a line that curves over, under, and then over again. Over, under, over. Now I'm going to add a little shadow where those 2 nostrils are. And then last, I'm going to draw a straight line across here for the mouth. And I'm going to repeat these steps just a little smaller for my other 2 moai. All right, now, if you have any pencil lines, you might want to erase those before we move on. And I'm going to be using a crayon to color my moai. Now, I'm going to add some texture to my moai, because if you learned in the video, they are made of volcanic ash or volcanic rock, so they're very rough and bumpy. And you can actually use a variety of things to create your texture. Here in the art room, I have these fun little texture plates, but you could use an actual tree, you could use a bumpy floor that's made out of concrete, you could use your driveway, you could put your paper over any textured item, even the bottom of a shoe, and color to get the rubbing to come through. So I'm going to put one of these texture plates underneath, and with a crayon, I want to use probably black or gray. And if you use black, you don't want to color as hard as you can, because you'll want your black lines to still show through. So I'm going to lay it on top, and I'm going to hold it in place, and I'm going to press down, but not as hard as I can. If I push too soft or too hard, I won't get the texture rubbing to come through. And I'm just going to fill over my moai. It might be a good idea for you to practice your texture rubbings on a separate piece of paper before you do them on here, so you can get the right amount of pressure. So I'm pressing down just hard enough to kind of fill in, but not super hard, because then my crayon will just go into all of the little cracks in my texture and it won't show up. My smaller moai probably won't show as much texture, and that's okay, unless I have something that's really bumpy. All right, so my moai are colored now. Next, I'm going to add some color to my land forms. And for this, I'm going to use crayon as well. And I'm going to use 3 different greens. If you don't have 3 different colors of greens, you could use the same crayon, but color in different values. Meaning on the bottom landform, you could color really lightly. And in the middle landform, you could color a little bit darker, push a little harder. And in the top landform, you could press your hardest and fill it in really dark and hard to get 3 different values. So I decided to put my lightest green crayon in the front. I'm going to do kind of a medium green crayon in the middle. And I'll save my darkest green crayon for the background, which is actually kind of a blue-green. And I'm using the side of my crayon so that I can't see the lines. And I'm coloring back and forth in one direction, and you'll notice me slow down and make smaller movements around my moai so I don't accidentally color over them. Oops, here's my last landform here. Now for my ocean and my sky, I'm going to be using markers and water. You could also use paint. Watercolor paint would work great. But I'm going to show you guys how to use marker and water. In case you don't have paint at home, you can kind of make your own watercolor. Just using regular washable Crayola markers and some water with a paintbrush. If you don't have a paintbrush, you could even use something like a makeup sponge or a cotton ball to add the water. All right, so for my water back here, I'm going to start with some blue markers, and you could even add in some purple or some green. I'm going to use these three colors. And in my ocean, I'm going to paint some lines, just horizontal lines. I'm going to do them in all three colors, some short, some long. Just going to vary them. And I'm going to do them, like I said, in three different colors. You could even add more colors if you do have more. If you wanted to, instead of adding straight lines, if you wanted to add wavy lines to make it look like the ocean has a little more movement in it, you could definitely do that as well. Trying to draw my lines in between wherever there's empty space. So they're all over. Now on my sky, I'm going to use warm colors. Yellows, oranges, reds, pinks, anything in the warm spectrum. Cool colors are on the opposite side of the color wheel. So for my sky, I'm going to kind of scribble color. I'm just going to fill in about halfway. I want to color all over, but I'm not going to fill it all the way in. And in the rays of my sun here, I'm going to kind of scribble color, make a pattern, and use two different warm colors. And I'm going to color every other one. You could use more than two colors for this if you'd like. Alright, so now all I need is a paintbrush and some water. So I've got my cup of water here and a paintbrush, and I'm going to start with my ocean. I'm going to get my brush wet, and I'm just going to pull my brush across the ocean. And instantly you're going to see that it makes the colors bleed together as the water kind of activates that marker. Now I want to be careful around my moai head, not to paint over my moai. And I'm not going to keep pulling the water across because I don't want to totally lose those lines I painted. I just want to fill in the white space between and around them. Don't want to leave any puddles on my page because those are going to drip. Next, I'm going to clean my brush because now I've got blue, green, and purple cool color marker on my brush, and I don't want that to get into my warm color, so I'm going to clean my brush. And now I'm going to do, whoops, so don't worry if your colors mix a little bit here. Now I'm going to do the same thing to my sky. I'm going to blend my colors, and you'll have to be really careful where the ocean and the sky meet. And I'm not worried about cleaning my brush between my warm colors because if they blend, they'll look nice together. I'm going to take a little cloth here and just pick up a little bit of that water that's kind of bleeding over. And again, I'm not worried about blending all of the marker. I just want to fill in the white areas. And now my moai landscape is finished.